Hey, welcome back to Monstrous Comics. My name is Zach. I'm a comic book artist from the UK. Today I'm going to be doing a drawing based on one of my favourite ever comic series, the manga One Piece. Now, if you've not heard of it, I'd be kind of surprised because it's absolutely huge. And if that's the case, I really recommend checking it out. It's so good. Anyway, today I'm going to be roughing, inking and colouring this drawing. And you can follow me the whole way through in sped up form. And I hope you can pick up a few little tips as we go along. I hope it's useful for you. Anyway, thank you very much. Enjoy the video. This drawing started life as all drawings do. A white page, a canvas of infinite possibilities. So of course I had to draw some One Piece fan art on it. Now I just start by sketching very freely and loosely at first, trying to find the shapes of the character. If I'd had a better idea for what pose I wanted to draw beforehand, then I would have approached the drawing with a bit more structure. But that's okay, it's quite a low pressure thing. It's not like I'm sharing a recording of this to the internet or anything. So I feel out the expression and the pose follows that. Again, this is not how I'd always approach a drawing, but I'm just going with the flow here. I sketch, erase and redraw quite quickly to get the shapes where I want them, even selecting some chunks of the drawing and moving or resizing them if need be. Now once the sketch is right, I'll start inking. Typically I start with the outline, but here for some reason I went straight into the facial details. I think I just wanted to nail down the expression straight away. I do my digital inking in Clip Studio. I tend to use the mapping pen to ink the details, as it just has a nice taper to the lines. It enables you to get a really crisp line with a very sharp finish. It's just the one that feels right to me. You might find something feels better for you, in which case use that. Now I use a much thicker pen to draw the outlines in. Not all artists want this look, but the slightly thicker outlines give the characters a bit of weight on the page, plus a contrast from the inner lines, which lends drawings a certain energy, which appeals to me a lot. Now I make my way around the drawing, adding the outline and finer details as I go. Now my style is not much like Oda's work, so I'm making lots of little decisions as I go, adapting the character to fit my way of drawing. And it's a pretty fun challenge. Now once I'm happy with the ink drawing, I take the drawing back into Photoshop to colour. I select Luffy's silhouette and fill it in with a more or less random colour for now. Then I try to find the right blue tones for the sky. I want something quite rich and bright, so I pick two tones and make a gradient of them in the background. I change Luffy's silhouette colour to what I think his waistcoat might be. Then I select everything else that's not the waistcoat. I can play with the hue and saturation of this selection using sliders until the new selection has become the colour that I think should work for his skin. I do the same for his chest scar, the famous straw hat and his eyeballs. I also tweaked the waistcoat colour on the way as I thought it was looking a bit too muted. I've now finished what we'd call the flats, which are the flat colours. I typically do these in the darkest tones so that I can paint the lighting on top. I'm not going for a particularly painted looking style here though. I want rounded surfaces contrasted with sharp edges. It's a contrast that, for me, has a pretty cool energy to it. Now when I'm doing the lighting, I'm imagining that the sun is off to the upper left of the image. I try to picture a beam of light coming from that direction, and I paint light onto any area of the character that I think the sunbeam will hit. I select a single area, but only where the sun might hit it. I then use a soft brush with a more vibrant tone to paint on a separate layer. The edges of the selection create a hard edge, but the soft brush creates soft edges. And I really like the way that they work together, and I use this technique most times when I colour anything. The rest of the shading and lighting process is basically me going from one area to the next and repeating the process. As I make my way across the character, I'm thinking about what the surface of the skin will be like in different areas, and I light them differently depending on that. Ribs and elbows, where the skin is more taut against the bone, might have slightly sharper edges than the bicep, for instance, where the skin would be tight against muscle. And I'd coloured that area differently too from how I'd shade his cheeks, which would have a much softer, squidgier look. After that I move on to the waistcoat, and I use the exact same principles, but the forms are different from those of Luffy's body. I'm trying to think about the way that fabric folds and creases here. I didn't really give the clothes much of a fabric texture, to be honest. I was thinking more about boldness and vibrancy really, so the contrast is maybe a bit high, a bit shiny, but still, I like the look. I then add a bit of roundness to the eyes. They're not being directly hit by the sunlight as they're being shaded by the straw hat. Still, light bounces and is reflected off other surfaces. I have a hint of yellow at the top of the eye to suggest light is reflecting off the underside of the straw hat. I then get a brush with low opacity, which means that it's a little bit see-through, and I add some blue hints into the darker shadows all over the image to suggest that the blue of the sky and sea is being reflected back at him. Now I do this on a new layer so that I can easily erase and adjust the layer without affecting any of the other parts. I add a touch of red on the underside of the straw hat too, where light is being bounced softly off of the waistcoat. I also wanted to soften the lines a little bit, so I played around with some different colours until I found one that settles nicely into the rest of the image. Then I turn my attention to the background. I use a chunky, spongy textured brush to roughly paint in a cloud shape. Then I use an eraser to soften up the edges and make them feel a bit more cloud-like. I do the same again, placing clouds in a way that hopefully feels natural, but also balances out the whole image. A few smaller, bluer clouds give the sense that those ones are further or higher up than the rest, and adds some extra depth to the scene. Lastly, I select an area at the bottom of the scene to show the horizon and the sea. I pick bluey green colours, do a gradient between them, before painting some small shimmers of light on the surface with a harder edged brush. At this point, I thought I'd finished the piece and I went to post it up online, but something was nagging at me. His face was looking slightly off. So I went back and adjusted the placement of his eye until I was happy with it. And with that done, I think this piece is complete. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope that it's been interesting seeing the process behind this. If there's anybody else you'd like to see me draw in future, let me know below. Can't make any promises, but I'll be interested to hear what you'd like to see. Thank you very much. See you next time.